Hey everybody, welcome back. So in this video, I wanted to talk about something I was just talking to somebody recently about, and the more I thought about it, I thought it'd be kind of an interesting topic to touch base on, because I think we all kind of do it sometimes whether we realize it or not. So have you ever had a time where you spoke to somebody, and then maybe shortly after, you just started, for some reason, you started worrying about the situation? You know, whether it was their reaction, their body language. Before you know it, you kind of just find yourself reading too much into it. Well, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Just overthinking people's reactions to things, or just overthinking people in general, really. But yeah, overthinking is something that we all do a lot in general. But when it comes to other people, it's oftentimes a lot more frustrating because, I mean, you know, nobody's a mind reader. When you talk to somebody and you see their facial expressions or their body language, or you just can't really tell what they're thinking, it can cause a lot of stress and anxiety sometimes for certain people, especially in social situations. So then we start kind of driving ourselves crazy, thinking, did I make them mad? Are they not interested in what I'm talking about? Do they not like me? What did I do wrong? So, yeah, I've done that many times in my life, and I know quite a lot of other people that do too. I was just recently talking to a relative of mine, and she was kind of expressing some frustration over that. So, yeah, it's a pretty easy thing to have happen, and it's pretty common too, for the most part. Okay, well, we know that part, so what do we do about it? Well, basically, I mean, that's kind of something I'm still kind of dealing with, just like with anybody else, but one of the things, I've kind of noticed some things over the years that have kind of helped in situations like that. So when you find yourself talking to somebody and you feel like you're having a hard time communicating with them and you don't really know how their feelings are in regards to the topic of discussion, or maybe even how they feel about you, I kind of just try to tread lightly, because I feel like there are a lot of times that you can talk to people, and I mean, if they give off pretty obvious vibes that they're not wanting to talk anymore, like they're just kind of being quiet after a while, or even kind of withdrawing, obviously that's kind of the cue to kind of step back for a little bit, or just maybe kind of let them come to you. And that is something I've struggled with many times in my life, that I've kept talking to people that clearly were done. So that kind of took some practice after a while. So, okay, so that one's pretty obvious, but if it's with somebody who maybe they are genuinely interested in talking to you most of the time, but maybe you have a conversation where they seem kind of quiet afterward, or you maybe try to tell them a funny joke and you couldn't tell how they felt about it because maybe the joke was, maybe you found it funny, but they didn't. It's kind of best to keep in mind, one of the things I found helpful was really just to remind yourself that you don't know what that person's thinking. So if you find yourself overthinking and wondering if that person, like if they didn't respond after a joke and you start assuming they're mad at you, just kind of remind yourself that they could have other things going on, especially if it's like at work or if there's something else going on while you're kind of talking to them, because a lot of people, you know, they talk to like coworkers and friends to kind of pass the time if they're kind of doing a project together. And it's not uncommon for things to kind of get stressful after a while, so if one person starts to seem kind of withdrawn or kind of isolated, they could just be focusing on the task or something else. They could be having a long day. You know, their mind could easily be just as preoccupied as yours is. And while you're sitting there thinking they don't want to talk to you, or they seem kind of distant, well, they could very well not want to talk or anything, or it could just simply be because they have other things on their mind as well. We tend to get wrapped up in the things that are going on in our own lives, that we kind of tend to forget that other people, they have some stuff going on too, and it's not to push anybody's issues aside or anything, it's just kind of something to keep in perspective, because it's easy to not keep that in mind, because not only can you not know what the person's thinking, but you don't know what their morning was like before they got to work, you don't know what they have going on in their life unless they actually tell you. If they do tell you and you're pretty close to that person, you probably have a pretty good idea. But if it's somebody that you don't know very well, that can make it a lot harder. And sometimes it can be just plain and simply that two people are pretty good people for the most part, but I've even found situations in my life before where it was nothing personal, but some people are just not, like, you know how some people in relationships can not be compatible with each other? Well, friendships and kind of interpersonal relationships can be like that as well. So it could not be anything personal from either person. It could just be that sometimes certain types of people don't communicate as well as other people because they're just very different. Their minds work very differently, and they have very different personalities. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can just be a very big, they're called barriers, like things that make communication more difficult. And that can be different from one person to the next, or one situation to the next, or even one relationship to the next. But there are a lot of barriers that can make everyday communication and interacting with people a lot more difficult. A lot of times if you spend enough time around that person or just certain people like them, you can kind of start to kind of notice things that work better and don't work so well just based on personalities, interests, hobbies, and you can start kind of figuring out, okay, well, this person's not a sports person. Does this person like movies? Does this person like jokes? And if they do, what kind of jokes do they like? It's because everybody's humor is different. What sparks one person's interest may not spark another. So there are quite a few things that can contribute into situations like that. So if you find yourself having a hard time getting through to people or communicating with certain types of people, don't be so hard on yourself, because it takes practice and it takes time. And if there's some people that seem like they're naturally good at it, it's probably because they've had a lot of practice. And some people are just more outgoing and more sociable than other people, and others are more quiet and withdrawn, and they like their peace and quiet. They like their solitude, so to speak. So when you're going about your day just talking to some of those people, just try to keep in mind that both of you are human, and people are going to have miscommunications in life, because those things are normal, but they don't have to be the end-all, say-all of everything. It just takes patience, and it takes time to kind of sharpen your social skills and get used to what makes one person tick and versus another. So hopefully this is something that can kind of shed some light on a pretty common issue, I'm sure, for a lot of people, especially with quarantine, wanting to be sure everybody's okay and see what's going on in people's lives. And not everybody wants to talk, but just try to reach out and see how everybody's doing. Until next time, have a great day, guys.